Thank you, everybody, for coming to the Aaron Torres Podcast YouTube page. If you could do me a quick favor, see that little subscribe button at the bottom of your screen? Go ahead, click that subscribe button. Really does help our channel grow, our audience grow, and I really do appreciate it more than you know. So click that subscribe button. Appreciate your support. Now, here's the video that you came here for.
All right, everybody. I'm back. Gonna be back. So tell you what, after all of these teams kind of seasons ended, we're kind of doing these kind of look aheads to the offseason. We did it for Carolina. We did it for UConn. We even did it for BYU on Thursday night show. I'll be transparent. I think that the Arkansas one, I decided to wait a day. I think the loss in the manner that it happened, nobody was ready to look ahead to next year. I think unlike a UConn, unlike a North Carolina, everybody was ready to move on. I don't think Arkansas fans were. So I talked a lot about the game itself on Thursday night. If you missed the show, go back and check it out. We are not doing that here today. Instead, it's kind of time to look ahead to what I think will be a very interesting offseason at Arkansas, and I think a very interesting 2025-2026 for the Hogs as well. Listen, before we get into the roster, I'll say this. I know there's a lot of negativity outside of the program, not inside the fan base. But one, Calipari, he did it. He got you back to the NCAA tournament, got you back to the Sweet 16. I think as those key players, Jonas Adu and Janelle Davis got healthy, you could see the improvement in the team. And I think the bigger thing is he kept you fighting when there were more injuries, Boogie Fland, Adu Thero, etc. And so I think this program is actually in good shape. It's certainly in better shape than it was at this time last year as you're trying to figure out, is Eric Musselman leaving? Who's the next head coach? Whatever. But two, I think Calipari still proved he's got a lot in the holster. He is a Hall of Famer for a reason. And if I could be glasses half full on what I know is a frustrating day, I think there's an argument that Arkansas's team on paper might be more talented in 2025, 2026 than it was this year. And I think you saw by the end of the year, they had as much talent as anybody in college basketball. So let's go ahead and dive in, talk about the players that will be back, could be back, should be back, won't be back. Obviously, we have to start with the stuff that we know before we get to some of the speculation. What we know, Jonas Adu, Nelly Davis are gone. And you feel terrible about the way things ended for them. I thought both those guys, again, I don't cover this team on a day-to-day basis, but it felt like they took a lot of heat early in the year. Are they only playing for NIL? Do they really care? Do they this? Do they that? It was clear both were hurt early, right? Nelly Davis comes back, Jonas Adu a little bit later, and they just get better over the course of the year. You could argue both of them. Best game as an Arkansas Razorback in the NCAA tournament, Jonas Adu against Kansas, Nelly Davis against Texas Tech. And you just feel bad that it had to end that way because I think both of those guys gave incredible, will to the program. Those are the only two guys that we know are going. I think there are two others that you feel pretty good are going to go pro, Boogie Fland and Adu Thero. Listen, with Boogie, I know what the arc of the season was, but he was a projected top 20 pick when he got hurt. I, by the way, give him credit for even coming back. Would have been very easy for him to shut it down, say, I'm not risking hurting my draft stock. If I come back and I don't play well, it might have a negative. Kid wanted to play. You give him a ton of credit. I think you wish him luck at the next level. I don't see the scenario where he's coming back. By the way, you have 2 5-star guards coming in behind him. So I think there's a real scenario where maybe he kind of can't come back because I don't know if there's a great spot for him. So Boogie Fland, I would assume, would go pro. Same with Adu Thero. Again, played so well early, gets hurt, comes back, plays for just a couple minutes against Texas Tech. You wonder if he was a little bit healthier. He seems like the kind of guy that would have been great to have on Darian Williams late in that game. But if Adu goes, listen, I think it was an incredible year. I'll say this really quickly about Adu because I know we want to start looking ahead to the guys that could be there and will be there. But Adu, I don't know that I've ever seen a college basketball player improve more over 3 years than him. I mean, go back and watch the highlights from Kentucky in year one if you can find them in 2022, 2023. I always used to joke, I didn't even think he could dribble. He's just a deer in headlights. And then he makes the jump going into his sophomore year, and then he makes a huge jump this year. He's going to be a first-round pick. I think also coming off the knee injury kind of leaves you no real choice but to go. I just don't think you can risk it with that athleticism. He will be a first-round pick. It wouldn't shock me if he's the first Arkansas Razorback off the board on draft night. Now let's get to what the roster will probably look like without those two, certainly without Nelly Davis and without Jonas Adu. What we do know, 4 freshman-ish players, 3 freshmen for sure. The foreign kid who's like 20, but he might be classified as a freshman. what I'll say, that's a great core to start with, right? Darius Acuff to me is a no doubt about it, top 5 pick. Again, we'll talk about, is he going to have the ball in his hands? Is he not? What happens with DJ Wagner? Blah, 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 this and that. But when you're talking about 2 McDonald's All-Americans, 2 probably projected top 20 picks, plus you have Isaiah Sealy, the long-term project from Arkansas, who clearly is good enough. Cal's not going to offer you if you're not good enough to play at some point. Maybe it's a little bit more of a process, but at the very least, that kid comes in. He's a practice player. He competes. He gets better. By the way, if you saw the way that Billy Richmond and Carter Knox got better, how can you not be excited about having a kid in the program that doesn't have the pressure to play right away and can just develop at his own pace? So I think Darius Acuff's going to come in and be a star. Malik Thomas, I'm curious to see how he fits alongside Acuff as well as some of the other guys that are coming in. And then, obviously the kid from Lebanon, I think he's a total wild card. You needed bodies in the front court. We'll see if he's the guy that, does he step in? Does he play a role? Does he whatever? This, that, the other thing. With that said, though, what I really want to do is get to some of the guys that could be back and maybe will be back and what it means for next year. Tell you a quick side story. Because of the way the nature is with the 2 fan bases, Kentucky and Arkansas, we already know what's there. I had an Arkansas or a Kentucky fan text me a few days ago. This was when Arkansas was playing well, and you could see there was a little, scorn in the tone of his text. And he said, "Wow, Arkansas really isn't in on very many of these high level portal guys. Wow, I just, does Calipari, does he get it?" And I'm like, well, I mean, realistically, they got 4 kids committed, and I think realistically, I don't think it's a stretch to say DJ Wagner could be back. Carter Knox could be back. Billy Richmond could be back. Trevin Brazil could come back. In theory, Big Z could come back as well. So that's 5 plus the 4 you got committed is 9. You don't need very many bodies outside of that 9 that you got right there. So as far as the guys that could come back, to me, I think DJ Wagner's the X factor. Listen, I know I've been defensive of DJ. I thought he got a raw deal at the last place. This kid was just a warrior late in the season for this team. He got so much better. He played like the dude that is, of course, the number 1 high school player in America 2 years ago. And I think, to me, he's got maybe the most fascinating decision or situation to make going forward, is that he proved himself to be a really good college basketball player. Again, the stats don't totally bear it out. 11 points, 4 assists per game this season. But look at the backstretch of the season, how well he played. 14 points, 6 assists against Kansas in that opening round of the NCAA tournament. I know he didn't play great on Thursday night, but 13 points, 4 assists, 24 points, 5 assists against Mississippi State, 17 points and 3 assists in that win against Missouri. He clearly got better over the back half of the year. And why I think he has the most interesting situation, I think he could go down when it's all said and done in the NIL era if he chooses to stay in college. And I never tell players what they should or shouldn't do. If you want to go pro, go pro. But I think he could be a guy that realistically goes down, maybe the guy who makes more money playing college basketball than anyone before him, because that's a guy that could come back and he would be an all-SEC type player. He could be an all-American type player next year for Arkansas if he decides to come back. And realistically, he's probably going to make more money as a college basketball player than he will as a pro. So listen, I know there's conversations for the family to have with him, obviously with John Calipari. I don't know why Arkansas wouldn't want him back, and I don't know why he wouldn't want to come back. I don't see him entering the portal. You're going to go somewhere else and try to get to where you are right now already at Arkansas. You're not going to make more money somewhere else. Now, I think there's conversations about the other guards, how it fits, what do you do, this, that, the other thing. But the fact is, you are going to have a great situation with a coach 2 years, you developed, you emerged. I think if you're DJ Wagner, I'm not telling you what to do. But if you decide to come back, I think it's set up very nicely for you to potentially be, like I said, a preseason type All-American for Arkansas next year. We'll see what happens. I think the other 2 X factor, well, really, there's 3 or 4, really. Carter Knox. I almost tweeted this the other night. Carter Knox, when I grow up, I want to be Carter Knox because that dude is fearless. Okay, again, you could say this about 7 different players on Arkansas. I don't know that there's a player that got better from start to finish over the course of the season than Carter Knox. Only averages 8 points per game this season, but 20 against Texas Tech, 15 against St. John's. And I'll be curious, one, did he play well enough to put himself to be in really good position to be drafted? Now, to me, what becomes interesting too is what is good position in the NBA? Like if you're Carter Knox and you can, be the 24th pick Is that a position that you want to be in? Or are you going to make more money at Arkansas next year? One, but then two, can you come back, become a star, and potentially be a guy that goes from the 26th pick this year to the 4th pick in 2025, 2020, in the 2026 NBA draft? And so to me, he's another one. Whatever he decides, I'm not here to tell you what you should or shouldn't do. But if you're not going to be a first-round pick, if you're not going to be a top 10, top 12, top 15 pick, you can probably make more money at Arkansas next year, get better, and put yourself in position to be that guy in the 2026 draft. So he has a fascinating pathway to decide. Billy Richmond, I would assume, is back. I love Billy. You know, I told my buddy, I go on with Phil Elson and Matt Jones on Hit That Line every Friday. Billy Richmond reminds me of the linebacker on your high school football team. Doesn't really know the plays, but he just goes a million miles an hour, and sometimes he misses a tackle, and sometimes he makes the tackle for the loss 8 yards in the backfield, and you just never know what you're going to get. But polish that kid a little bit. Another guy, listen, Chris Beard said when Arkansas beat Ole Miss, in the SEC tournament, he said, I think every single guy that I saw on that team is going to play in the NBA at some point. Billy Richmond can be that guy. He actually kind of in some ways reminds me of a slightly more polished Adu Thero when Adu Thero was a freshman. So I would assume of everybody, he's probably the most likely to come back. The wild card to me, I think, is Trevin Brazile. Trevin Brazile, once it got figured out, and I used this line a few weeks ago, but Jay Billis used this line. Actually, I stole it from Jay Billis. You know, I can be critical of Jay Billis, but I thought this line was awesome. And he said, sometimes in life, you need to be needed. And I think Trevin Brazile, he's trying to find his role. New coaching staff. Adu Thero comes with Coach Cal. Big Z comes with Coach Cal. Jonas Adu's that high-profile guy. And you know, Trevin Brazile's trying to figure out how he fits in. And once Coach Cal just unleashed him and believed in him, Trevin Brazile was one of the biggest difference makers in all of college basketball. So can you get him back? What about Big Z? I know people were down on Big Z at the end of the year, but let's not forget that without Big Z, you know, do you beat Kentucky? You know, do you win some of those games in the middle of February that you won with him in the lineup? I don't know. And so I'm curious to see if Big Z comes back. And I think obviously from there are still some pieces. You know, I think you need one more guard in the backcourt. Even if DJ Wagner comes back, certainly more if he doesn't. But one more guard in the backcourt. You know, I think I said it the other day. The Wilkerson kid, I think it's Lamar Wilkerson from Sam Houston State. I'd be stunned if he ends up anywhere other than Arkansas next year, assuming he comes back to college basketball. Home state school, you know, financially, obviously Arkansas is going to be taking care of you. So I wouldn't be surprised if that happens, and it happens relatively quick. And then I think obviously you need another big man to replace Jonas Adu. I like, by the way, the idea, recruit high upside guards like a Boogie Flan, like a Darius Acuff, and then go find a grown man, 22-year-old in the portal in the front court. But obviously, you get out rebounded by 12 on Thursday night against Texas Tech. Probably need a little bit more bulk in the front court. I think it's a little bit overrated because I think Trevin Brazile was a guy that was in foul trouble all night the other day. And it's like, to me, if Trevin Brazile is just healthy, maybe we're looking at things a little bit differently. But to me, I'm here to tell you, we'll see what happens over the next couple weeks. You just never know. If DJ Wagner comes back, if Carter Knox come back, if Trevin Brazile and Billy Richmond come back, those four come back, I'm sorry. We're going to do it all over again. I know everyone's going to criticize Torres and, that's a top 10 team. That's probably a top 5 team when you have to factor in Darius Acuff, Malik Thomas, and the freshman coming in as well. So we will see what happens, but two things can be true. You could and should be disappointed with the way things ended. You were right there on the cusp, ready to go to the Sweet 16, ready to go from the Sweet 16 to the Elite 8. But man, oh man, you got a chance to be really good next year, and I think that's the thing with Cal. You're always going to have a team that's in the mix. He proved it this year. I think he's going to prove it as well. If you enjoyed this video, do me a quick favor. Subscribe. Aaron Torres Pod YouTube channel. 53,000 subscribers. Can we get to 54 by the time the Final Four hits? We will see. By the way, I say it all the time. This isn't one of those channels. We stop talking college basketball the day the season ends. We're going to be talking portal. We're going to be talking more. Follow Torres on the Hogs on Twitter for all your late-breaking Hogs news.